Hello, this is a video about diffusion and surface area to volume ratio, which is a question that comes up in the biology and combined science biology GCSE papers. So diffusion is a type of cell transport and it's very important for moving things into and out of cells, and it happens alongside active transport and osmosis. So, the question says, a single-celled organism has a large surface area to volume ratio. So, if we're thinking about a single-celled organism, first of all, I know this is going to be really small because cells are really small. So this could be a bacteria. And it has a large surface area to volume ratio. So that means its surface area is large compared to its volume. So we could have a number here like 10 to 1 or 6 to 1, as the example below will show us. So when we have single-celled organisms that are really small, it is possible to transport everything we need into that cell via diffusion, which is a passive process. This question is really nice because it steps through how we work out surface area to volume ratio, and then we're going to use that knowledge to apply it to explain why multicellular organisms cannot use diffusion for transport. So let's have a look at figure 1. So we've got two cubes here, and the surface area to volume ratio for cube A is 6 to 1, so they've worked that out for us already. So we can see that cube A has 1, it doesn't give us a unit here, but we assume it could be in centimetres or millimetres or even micrometres if we're thinking about cells. 1 and 1 and 1 for its length and its depth and its height. And cube B is double the size, 2 and 2 and 2. So how do we calculate the surface area to volume ratio? Well, first of all, we can start with calculating the surface area of each face, then working out what the total surface area is. So the surface area of one face, to do area, we multiply base by height. So I would multiply 2 by 2, and that would give me 4. Now we need to think about the total surface area. So this is the cube, which is going to have 6 sides. So I would multiply my number here, my surface area for one face, which was 4, by the total number of faces, which was 6, and that gives me a total surface area of 24. Now, in our surface area to volume ratio, next we're going to need to calculate the volume. So this time we multiply the height by the base, but also by the depth of the cell. So 2 by 2 by 2, that gives me 8. Again, we haven't got units here. We don't get a mark for units in this question. However, if I was including units, it could be centimetres squared for area and centimetres cubed for volume, just a reminder. Okay, so my surface area to volume ratio, I need to use the total surface area of the cube and the volume of the cube. So I've got 24 to 8. Now in questions like this, our best answers put this as a ratio where the volume is 1. So if I divide both sides by 8, then I get my volume as 3 to 1. So cube A, it told us, had a surface area to volume ratio of 6 to 1, whereas cube B has a surface area to volume ratio of 3 to 1. So we can see that smaller cells or smaller size organisms have a large surface area compared to their volume, and larger organisms have a smaller surface area comparatively compared to their volume. Okay. So let's look at another example. Again, we've got two cubes, which is really common in questions like this. This time we've got a bacterial cell, cube X, which is very small, and cube Y, which is a multicellular organism, which is going to be bigger than a bacterial cell. And we can see there's quite a big difference in these numbers here, so 0.0002 versus 11. It says, a bacterial cell can absorb all of the nutrients it needs by diffusion through its outer surface. Explain why a multicellular organism cannot absorb all the nutrients it needs by diffusion through its outer surface. So straight away I can see that the diffusion distance is longer in Y. So to get to those cells in the middle of organism Y, the diffusion distance is going to be much longer. And that means the diffusion rate is going to be much slower. So if we're thinking about oxygen, which is a really nice example of a gas that diffuses into cells, it would be really tricky to get enough oxygen into each of these cells if it was taken in through the outer surface. That's why we tend to see multicellular organisms having large exchange surfaces like the lungs or like the small intestine, rather than absorbing that directly from the environment or through the surface. Okay, so we can say the diffusion distance is longer and therefore the diffusion rate will be slower. Okay, so we've explained, but now we also need to include calculations. So really what this is saying is, what is the surface area to volume ratio for X and for Y? So let's work that out together. So if I start with X, I'm going to apply just what I did in the previous example. If I look at its surface area, I need to multiply this length by this length. So 0.0002 multiplied by 0.0002 . And that gives me an answer of 4 times 10 to the minus 8. So we're talking about a really small number here. The total surface area, remember we're still using a cube, we've still got 6 sides, so we multiply the surface area of each side by 6, and that gives us our total surface area, which is 2.4 times 10 to the minus 7. To work out my volume, I'm multiplying the height by the width by the depth as well. So I'm going to write that as 0.0002 cubed. And the volume then is 8 times 10 to the minus 12. Okay, so my surface area to volume ratio I have got 2.4 times 10 to the minus 7 versus 8 times 10 to the minus 12. But remember, we really want this volume expressed as 1. And if I do that calculation, I would find it's 30,000 to 1. That is an absolutely huge surface area compared to its volume. So that means that in this bacterial cell, it can diffuse everything it needs into the cell directly through the surface. It doesn't need a transport mechanism. Okay, let's compare that to Y then. So Y had a surface a length of 11 for each of its lengths. So the surface area of one face is 121. The total surface area would be 121 multiplied by 6 because the 6 sides. That's 726. To work out the volume, I need to cube 11, and that gives me 1,331. So my surface area to volume ratio is 726 to 1,331. Okay, again, I need to put this so the volume is equal to 1. So if I divide both sides by 1,331, I find that my surface area here, 0.54, is much, much smaller than my result for X. So this is definitely proven that this cell would not, the multicellular organism would not be able to get all of the substance it needs by diffusing through the outer surface. So when we do diffusion and surface area to volume ratio questions, you need to remember what diffusion is, and you need to be able to work out the surface area to volume ratio and explain why it is important for that organism. Good luck!